they have a family, they have children, they have a good job, but something inside hits them that there is no meaning.
Stephen Lew is the founder and CEO of the School of Positive Psychology. You talked about Gen X who can't express their emotions.
Because they come from the timeline whereby when you start to talk about your emotions, people will shut you down, say, let's move on, suck it up, don't cry over spilled milk.
What is the biggest challenge to our mental health today?
Mental health is emotional health, social health, spiritual health, and everything in between.
So I worked with you.
I think in our coaching sessions, you have always reminded me that my strength is being able to lean into my authenticity and vulnerability.
Your best friend jumped.
When I talk about this story, I always in my mind tell you that it's a suicide. Because I would rather believe that he chosen to take his life in order to have a closure. I wake up actually feeling very pessimistic and sad sometimes, and dreadful.
You talked about Gen X who can't express their emotions because we're taught to just hold it in, keep quiet, suck it up, and just, continue on no matter how hard times are. And then on the other hand, what I see on social media is Gen Z, which Gen X raised. They're going on social media and they're crying and pouring out and oversharing. It seems like the other extreme. Do you think we need to learn how to communicate our emotions in a healthier manner?
Currently at the workplace, leaders have to manage 5 different types of generation. It's challenging for them, right? And they all bring their values and the nuances, their strengths and their beliefs and their insights. So back to what you're asking, I guess that we need to learn from everyone because everyone is different and unique, right? So when you hear that Gen X may not be able to express themselves more because they come from the timeline whereby when you start to talk about your emotions, people will shut you down, say, let's move on, suck it up, don't cry over spilled milk. They teach stoicism, be cool, be calm and collected. Nothing wrong with it, but when they need to be emotionally vulnerable, because it's part of healing and well-being, they cannot do it because they have not learned, right? So even an adult of like 50 years old who is a professional, a successful leader, but their emotional literacy, it may be 5-year-old. Because somewhere at 5-year-old, when he was about to cry, his father or his parents may say that, shut up, don't be a girl, don't be weak, and he has been denied. But what he has learned is that crying is not allowed, but anger is allowed. If my father can rage and drink and do, go attend like MMA fights or whichever, nothing wrong with it, express your in a healthy, sporty manner, but rage and violence might be more accepted than crying. But if we want to have a well-being to marshal against burnout, we need to acknowledge that these are important parts of emotional expression of human being. And when we hear a Gen Z expressing their emotions, yes, how do we know whether the person is doing it? It may be doing it for attention, it may be doing it for their healthy expression of themselves. It can be anything. But I think what we want to learn here is that these emotions are signals that something is not aligned, something is disconnected. We got to look at these two parts and integrate them. How can they learn from each other, right? I think that's important. I don't think that, but of course some people may say that, but I don't want to go on social media and then see this person just crying their eyes out, getting likes, but I'm saying, okay, look at it in a broader sense that, is this content helpful for you? Is it teaching you to be much more emotionally vulnerable? If this person is doing it just for outlet, maybe this person needs help. And this is the way the person is asking for help on social media. And there's nothing wrong about it.
So I'm Gen X, and I will admit that I struggle with being vulnerable, also because of my past. I started in the media industry when I was very young, became very famous suddenly, didn't know how to handle it. So I became very guarded, didn't want to show emotions. So a combination of that. that as a boss, I don't show emotions. I don't show weakness. No, 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 no. You cannot show any of that. So this podcast also is a bit of my journey to learn to be comfortable being more vulnerable. And I know there are a lot of people like me who struggle with the emotional vulnerability or talking about it, or as you said, the emotional literacy is quite low. What can we do as a start, as a first step?
I think that was a powerful first step, acknowledging the awareness that more can be done, right?
What's the next step?
Focusing on training the emotional literacy, learning emotional languages, learning different forms of emotional expression, looking at the emotional wheel, and use the suggestions in the emotional wheel to describe how you feel. And learn to work with one person that you feel psychologically safe with to talk about these emotions. Having a goal in mind that the whole point for doing this so that you could be much more vulnerable. I will highly recommend like Brene Brown's work. And she has a great TED Talk on vulnerability. Watch it. It's like 20 minutes or half an hour. And you can draw a lot of nuggets of wisdom. Also look around your social circle. Find this circle that is willing to walk this journey with you to uncover these emotional expressions. And when someone comes to you and say that, look, I think discussing emotions is weak, it may not be just psychological, it could be hugely cultural, because the person has not been exposed or been allowed to express themselves coherently in that way. So they're being denied again and again and again. And I like to believe, given my work, that 90% of my clients, my students that I work at the School of Positive Psychology, even in corporate training, a lot of them are women, right? And there are also a lot of men now, luckily, a good side, coming out to learn about these things because they know that emotional language, emotional intelligence is important. Right? We are all emotional creatures, but we're not suggesting here that we go into a state of hysteria. That what is not healthy is withholding emotions, and it may not be healthy not just for the person, it's not healthy for their relationships. If they love someone, and this also eats into their parenting style, their values of the world, and how they show up. It comes from a very primal driven instincts as animalistic, because that 200,000 years ago, when our cavewoman era, we have saber-tooth waiting outside our home, and we also have tribes wanting to conquer us. If we show any signs of weakness, then this might be exploited, right? But right now we're living in safe conditions, yeah. But we are still using that as a form of blueprint of success. So we just wanted to develop that awareness and practice that it's okay to share our emotions. When we share our emotions, it has two effects. The first effect is that when we share about our negative emotions, not because they are negative, but just a representation of sadness, anger, guilt, all these emotions, we are more likely to feel joy, excitement, exhilaration, peacefulness, and contentment to the full spectrum. Because when a person don't share their emotions, they numb themselves. You know what they numb? They also numb their happiness, and they also numb their full spectrum of well-being. And so we cannot just switch off the negative, because we also switch off the positives in that manner.
There's a lot of attention on mental health right now. What is the biggest challenge to our mental health today?
I think one of the biggest challenges is that we are still very early in our journey of understanding what is really mental health. And the word mental health is also limiting on its own, because mental health seems to suggest that it's mental, it's brain related, but it's more than that. And I would likely to say that it's mental and emotional health. Yeah, but once we look at mental, because there's also a system behind it, supported by the medical system, the pharmaceutical, that we need to do brain scan, and then we need to look at how depression look like in brain scans, and from there we can prescribe medication to it, which is really important, but that doesn't solve the mental health problem, because mental health is more than mental health. Mental health is emotional health, social health, spiritual health, and everything in between. But we are looking at it from that dimension because it's much more available and accessible. That's why we could, train counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and doctors and social workers, or even parents to be much more informed of mental health. But it is more than that. This is what I'm trying to say here. What I may say might be a bit more macro rather than just going into the symptom like what is depression and what is not. That's the first part. When you do a brain scan the brain is always shifting, right? It's just like watching a soccer match that if you do a brain scan of depression, it will look like this, but 5 seconds later, it will change. So we don't have a static picture. So which also means that everything is flowy and fluid, right? So mental health, to me, I would like to say, is a sense of disconnection with themselves and to the world around them. And what do I mean by disconnection? Loneliness, a lack of meaning, lack of higher purpose, not knowing what they are doing, not knowing who they are, and why are they doing the things they are doing. Yeah. I think there's one interesting story about I don't know whether it was in Cambodia or in Vietnam many years ago, they were promoting one of the psychiatric drugs to treat, and it's one of the antidepressant drugs, and they were asking the doctors over there, how are you treating these symptoms related to depression or mental health issues? And then the doctors, I think I can't really remember the story in details, but the doctor replied that, we don't have Prozac, but we have the cow. I said, what do you mean? So I think one of the patients, which was a farmer, he stepped on a landmine and his leg was blown off. So he went into depression, a state of despair because he lost his livelihood, his source of income, and he was bedridden for a little while, and he was depressive. And the village came in, look at their resources, and they gave him a cow. And he started to recover and attach his livelihood to the cow. He tended to the cow's needs, bring out to the field. The children in the neighborhood come down, visit him. He will name the cow and let them play with the cow. And that became his source of meaning, right? And there was no antidepressant drugs given. But I'm just saying that this is just one example. So mental health, sometimes we need to look at it from a systemic point of view, that we also need a societal intervention. So the saying that it takes a village to raise a child is very true. And if that is true, it may also take a village to heal a person, right, systematically. So when we look at mental health, we tend to look at it from the symptomatic point of view. And 60% of talk therapy actually fail to a certain way. Or I wouldn't say they fail in a certain way, but the symptoms relapse, right? So don't get me wrong, talk therapy is really important. That's the first, that is also a good intervention. We need to see a therapist. But I'm just trying to say that the healing process is more than that. It's also social and emotional. Yeah. So right now, there are a lot more interventions. So when we look at mental health, we got to approach it from a 360 multifactorial point of view. And I think in Singapore, we have done a lot, and we are still improving our systems in education, in community engagement, in mental health support. And we have come a long way comparing to pre-pandemic, of course.
I once looked at a checkbox for depression.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering whether I had depression. And I went through a checkbox. I'm like, nope. And I think it's partly my personality. I tend to be very optimistic, and I move away from pain. So it's just inbuilt systems to move away from that. But I know depression is becoming more and more of an issue in the world. What would be the signs to look out for if a person thinks they have it or they suspect someone close to them has it?
Great question. I think there's a lot of literature out there providing the depression checklist. I think some of the signs would be low mood. They do not feel like being engaged in life. There's a dip in terms of the energy level and also the activities of engagement. They might be more withdrawn. One of the signs of depression is that the time start to expand for them.
What does that mean?
Means that 1 minute can stretch to 1 hour. Like time become very slow. Time expansion, so that life is much more draggy, and it's not so engaging. They may have they may experience more sadness. Sometimes depression may not come with just sadness. It may come with a sense of helplessness and apathy that they don't want to engage with anyone in life. So depression generally could be persistent sadness, but like what I mentioned earlier is a state of disconnection. They are disconnected with themselves, with other people, especially no meaning, and the sense of the world right now. There are many different sorts of depression. There might be mild depression, there might be major depressive disorder, there might be persistent depressive personality types, or there could be depression due to seasons. There may be depression due to chronic depression that may last up to 2 years. But in whole, I will view depression as a sense of disconnection. And these behavioral symptoms will show up. So the person may not be more engaged, they may be more withdrawn. And sometimes this may not be a classic literature, because depression can be also a sign of existential crisis, that they are confronting their meaning of life, that at this part of their life they feel that they are stuck, they do not know what to do, and sometimes they may even feel that they have a family, they have children, they have a good job, but something inside hits them that there is no meaning. Yeah, and then these symptoms may also come out as a form looking like depression, but this is not depressive. This is actually more of an existential crisis or existential isolation. So in general, depression is a holding term that signals these symptoms, right? And I will always say that it's disconnection. Yeah.
Is the world becoming more disconnected, even though we have so much social media and so much, globalization?
I think we are hyper-connected digitally, but we are disconnected on a human level. The disconnection is more on the psychological, the human level, and there's also a sense of dread and feeling the apathy that I cannot do anything. I'm so small. So this will suggest disconnection. I keep going back to meaning and purpose. I keep going back to the word calling, right? Some people get really stressed about, I don't know what's my meaning, I do not know what's my purpose, I don't know what's my calling, and that chasing after it, finding out about it, give them more anxiety and sometimes even depressive feelings, because I don't know my goal, right, in my life. You don't need to know everything, but lean into your strengths and aspirations in terms of how could you contribute a small piece to the world that the world needs. That would come from a place of helping them to feel much more connected. They don't need to go out and solve the world's problem like, climate change. Of course, everyone needs to do something about it. But they could dedicate a cost to something that gives them meaning and significance. It could be helping someone, supporting someone in education, in training, mentoring, coaching, of helping a friend. This gives them significance and meaning. And that is a part where they feel more connected.
A young person asked me once, how do I find what my passion or my purpose is? And the first answer that came to me instinctively, I said to them, get involved. Do things, do more things, because you won't know what you really enjoy, what gives you that passion or that sense of purpose, unless you do a variety of things. That's how you explore and discover yourself. Someone much older and very successful asked me, how do I find my purpose? And I said, one of the things is, at this point in your life, is giving of your knowledge, of your insights to help lift someone else, make someone else better. That's not your inner circle. And they realized that, that sense of giving is actually growing for them. I think that's two different ways to look at it, at finding meaning or purpose for one's own life. And I think it's always a journey. It's not I found it, yay, today, and that's it. Because as you evolve, it changes a little bit as well. You start to have your purpose expands, or it goes to a different context.
I like what you say. I think there's a Japanese saying it's called ikigai, right? That you in a sweet spot between having your purpose, having your passion, your hobbies, and contribution to the world, and then you get paid at the same time, right? And then there's a saying about that getting up in the morning with a sense of purpose in ikigai, yay, right? But frankly speaking, I don't wake up with a sense of ikigai every day. I don't. And in fact, I wake up actually feeling very pessimistic and sad sometimes and dreadful because I do have a sense of purpose, a calling and a meaning, and that helps me to realign to the center. So even though I have dread and fear all the time until today, I choose to take action regardless, right? And that is important because how I choose to respond to the world or how we choose to respond to the world is more important than sometimes need versus is this the right thing to do? Yeah. So back to what you say about just take actions, do an array of things. I think that I love that suggestion. And many students or many people I work with, when I say students, they are not young students, they are working professionals, they are leaders, wanting to become change makers, wanting to study positive psychology, psychotherapy, to become counselors or therapists and coaches, to be catalysts of change. They always ask this question, am I doing the right thing? Is this my purpose? Is this my meaning? Can I really make ends meet, etc., etc.? But then what we discovered is never about finding your purpose, but it's crafting it. Yeah, you can never find your purpose. It doesn't fall. It's like hidden in the cave up in the mountains, right? Many people have climbed the mountains, but they didn't find the purpose over there. But they realize that the purpose is crafted. It's like a dance with yourself and the universe, right? It sounds a bit like existential and philosophical right now, but it is a ongoing showing up of what you dedicate, how you choose to dedicate your life to do. And then this purpose will emerge organically. And people will start coming to you with a similar purpose, similar direction, and you will start to attract and do things together.
That's where you put your life in your hands. You are like the CEO of your own life. I love it. You mentioned that you wake up feeling that dread and fear every day. And I'm going to admit that I constantly have a feeling of anxiety and a bit of that feeling that I'm not safe. And I think it's also my personality. I used to be able to, when I go on a flight, I'll go in like 10 minutes before the gates close, check in, oh, it's fine. Now, I want to be there like 3 hours ahead of time because I don't like that sense of anxiety and rush and fear that, what if I forgot something? What if I didn't do something? I have that all the time. And I don't know why I have it now at this point that it's almost daily. That sense of, it's not done. I haven't finished something. Oh no, is something bad going to happen? Is that normal?
You know why I laugh? Sorry, not to your question, but because this is the question that we get. Is it normal? Is it healthy? Do I have a problem? I think it's just part of a human condition, I would say. I mean, I could just go like instantly into your question and say that, it's signal that maybe there's some signs of anxiety. It may be related to your stage of life. It could be also related to your change of behavior or mindset. We can go there. But I want to dial back and say that no, it's just part of the human condition. We all have some parts of this ourselves, right? And I think the end of the day is more about, is it serving you? If you have the awareness, it's making you feel this way. Is it affecting your life? Is it causing you suffering? And if it's not causing you suffering, it's fine, right? But if you're curious, you want to lean into these human conditions to find out why is this existing in the first place for personal development and self-awareness. I would highly say, see a therapist, right? And seeing a therapist is really important. I spend many hours seeing a therapist despite being a therapist myself, because we all know that it is important and therapist sees therapists, right? And it's like working with a personal coach, like how you work with me when I had these issues of speaking. And it's about committing to a process of personal discovery. And using ChatGPT for therapy is not therapy. Just to say it, all right? It's not therapy. Unless you are a psychotherapist, you train your ChatGPT to become your personal therapist, and you know to critically evaluate what is right and what may be wrong, and that is helpful. But if you are not a trained therapist or a coach, your ChatGPT cannot support you in that manner. There's a stark difference. Okay, I just want to say that. Yeah.
That was really good because I think this new anxiety that I have makes me a lot more organized and more prepared because I just want to make sure things are okay when I used to just be chaos. So it's actually serving me. Thank you for letting me see that. So you used to be afraid of public speaking.
Still afraid.
But you do a lot now. I see you giving keynotes. I see you moderating panels. How did you overcome that fear?
I don't think I have overcome that fear. But instead, I learned to utilize that fear. Because you can never get rid of fear in life. The more you try to get rid of it, the more it chases after you. So weird, right? It's like the more you want to be more relaxed, then the more anxious you get. Yeah? So there's a big part about the psychology of fear and the psychology of anxiety. So I felt that I never have gotten rid of public speaking, but I've learned more about myself with my relationship with public speaking. Do I wake up each day in the morning with ikigai, with a burst of meaning? I don't. I still wake up with fear and dread that is embedded in my unconsciousness, like from my childhood, right? But I still take action anyway. So with the same principle, when I have fear of public speaking, I go back to the source and the intention of what is the message? Why am I doing this? So that it's not about me, and this is what you have taught me also, it's about who is listening to this, right? And that is my first part. And the second part is I was speaking publicly, and there was like 1,000 over people in the audience, and I had to moderate a panel with very powerful people. And I was already having that sort of anxiety, right? Pre-stage anxiety. And that was a really interesting experience for me, if I can share about. So when I was walking towards the stage, and I was having the anxiety and fear that, oh no, it's going to happen soon. And then what caused more fear was, I asked myself the question, which part of myself should I engage? Which persona should I engage that will make me speak better, right? So I imagine in my mind there is this Stephen Lew, the CEO of the school, and then there is Stephen Lew that is a therapist, or Stephen Lew that is a storyteller, or Stephen Lew that is a person who cares about the world. So there are many different parts, right? So I could imagine they're all different parts. But in the end, in the process of doing that, I got stressed. I got more stressed and anxious. And then what I did next surprised me too. And that was what I said. I don't need to be any part. I just need to be me. But then, what is me? Right? So, but then I realized that all this time, I've not given the permission to myself to be me. I have always asked myself to do something. So when I give myself the permission to be me, all this part starts to integrate. And I become whole. And then when that happened, I was no longer thinking about what will happen next. I become in flow with every second and every minute that unfolded.
What a wonderful strategy you created for yourself. I see how a lot of people struggle with that anxiety, that fear. Of course, every time we go on stage, no matter how long you've been doing it, you always feel fear. I still feel the anxiety and the adrenaline. It's the adrenaline that's coming through you, right? No one goes in relaxed. And I think if you go in relaxed, that means either you've done it 100 over times, then you're very familiar, or you don't really care. But when it's something important, you will have the adrenaline saying this is important, your life is on the line, right? Your reputation, your status. And something I always tell people to do is focus on the audience instead of being self-focused, self-conscious. It's very hard when you focus on audience. You're putting your energy outwards instead of putting all the pressure on yourself. So I worked with you. What were your 3 biggest takeaways as we worked together on public speaking?
Georgina, I need to say this, that I'm very thankful for you being my coach. Not because I'm paid to do this, but I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart. I think in my speaking journey, you came at a point whereby it was what I needed. So the 3 takeaways number 1 is about versatility, right? I think what struck me when you say it is that when we are a speaker, we have to be versatile to be adaptive. So when you mention it's about the audience, I need to think about getting out of my own head and focus on my audience. And what is the language that may resonate with them, right? So that's about versatility. The second part is about doing it. I don't know whether was it in that way, but it's about doing it from the place of self. To me, authenticity is very important. And I think in our coaching sessions, you have always reminded me that my strength is being able to lean into my authenticity and vulnerability. And that is my strength, and I need to use it. But when I go on stage, sometimes the jitters happen. It's because that I was not engaging from that part. I was engaging in a performative way. That how will this pan out, right? So I was living in the future, but not in the moment. I think the third part that struck me was how the way you speak publicly is the same way you speak socially. The voice is the same. You can't switch on a public stage on voice. It's exactly how you show up in your day-to-day lives. So that was something that I've taken away and onboarded.
How you speak in your inner circle with your friends, that's your natural default style. If you go on stage, you want to do a different, style of speaking, meaning whether it's your grammar, your accent, your diction, it's going to sound fake. And I always want people to leverage on their strengths and who they are and use those so that people feel connected.
Can I give some context to why I came to see you for coaching, apart from the online masterclass? So I like to go and explore for personal development. And because of my complex childhood trauma that I went through, it have impacted me in my brain development, like ADHD, and also sometimes the way I perceive life in a certain way. Then I realized that it didn't only impact me in terms of my personality, also my brain development, which in return impact my speech delivery. If I am not mindful, or when I'm passionate or emotionally charged, I will tend to speak in a high rate of speech, and my words will start to become very mumbled or mushy, which also means that I do not enunciate my words clearly. And this speaking disorder was discovered during my personal development journey as a speaker. And it's called cluttering as a form of speech fluency disorder. Not stammering, but cluttering. And it's also related to ADHD. And in order to overcome it, actually we can't overcome it because it's part of the brain development, but I could apply techniques so that I become more mindful. So it does require a lot of cognitive energy to apply these techniques. So by the time when you were working with me, I've discovered these underlying issues, and that underlying issues have always given me a sense of anxiety and angst in my stomach area. So when I go on into public speaking, when I take on public speaking gigs, I always have this coldness and void in the middle, signaling that something is wrong. But then I found out that I had these issues, but of course, at the same time, with these techniques and awareness and coming to you, it helps me to create a new blueprint of thinking that even these, I do have fluency disorder, I can train myself to unlearn to my best capability and still show up authentically and drawing truth in my own ways to speak what I care about. So I just wanted to share this for anyone who's listening in the future. If you have fear of public speaking, it's an opportunity for you to redesign your journey of how you connect with yourself. And even till today, I still have that fluency disorder and ADHD. I am utilizing it for my delivery. So thank you.
That's fantastic that you shared this this journey and these challenges. And I would say that a lot of people have, I'm speaking from a Singapore context. We're not taught to enunciate our words well. We're taught to just mumble our words. We say mother, father, We mispronounce our words. We say opportunity. We're not taught to speak well. If someone speaks well with a crisp enunciation, everyone goes, wow, why are you, yaya papaya, who do you think you are, right? So we minimize people who want to speak well. So that is not the accepted way of doing it. But I'm seeing pockets where it's starting to change as we become more globalized. We want to speak to be understood. That's first and foremost. And we also want to speak that draws people's respect, that showcases our credibility and our expertise. And we can't do it if we are mispronouncing in any language, not just English language, any language. If you don't enunciate the words clearly, something's lost in the delivery. But I also want to say that when we're too hung up on that, it impedes, right, the flow. But when you are passionate about what you're saying, it doesn't matter if some of the words are off. It doesn't matter. Don't let that be the biggest issue. The biggest issue is, how can someone learn from my insights? How can I help change their perspective, let them see different things, learn different things? So I love how you shared, your journey of overcoming what you feel are your flaws. But I also want to remind everyone, these are habits that we learned from young. We can unlearn it and develop new habits. New habits are hard, but if you set your mind to it and be mindful and keep doing it, you can sort of adjust, not change, but adjust the way you speak so that it reaches the goal that you want. Because we all want to be better versions of ourselves. And I would say even for me now, also when I'm very excited about something, I kind of, mumble through my words. Or if I do a voiceover early in the morning, I'm not warmed up, I kind of go, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what are you doing? Since you started doing more public speaking gigs, you become more famous, obviously. And in your industry, you're well known. What's your perspective towards fame?
Strange question to me. Nobody have asked me that before. I've never thought that I'm associated with fame of any kind. And this is my mental framing and my worldview. So that's why it's a strange question. I have never unpacked it in any way. Maybe my closest attempt to answering this is, how could we design and make more impact if we have the abilities in doing so, to do so? Yeah, I think this is my closest answer to it, because I don't consider myself associated with fame. Yeah.
Do you have people coming up to you and say, oh, Stephen, I've heard of you, I saw you on something?
Yes.
How do you feel when that happens?
Oh yeah, I have. Of course, such encounters whereby someone came up to me and say hi because they were in a talk that I was delivering, or they have seen me at some sort of event and it was related to my work. Oh, I feel grateful that they came out and say hi, and I will be very curious about at which point and what was the talk about, and being self-critical. Oh my God, did I say the wrong thing? Like all humans do. But I do appreciate that the connection, that they came out and say that they learned something.
When you were 14, your best friend jumped and he didn't make it. Can you tell us a bit more?
So, I was sharing earlier that I was attracted to people, right, that were a lot of emotional baggages.
Yeah.
And, I never talked about him before. James, what's his name? He was a South Korean boy, and we connected immediately, and we spent a lot of time together at school. He has a lot of problems, family issues. I also had a lot of family issues. We became good friends, and his home wasn't a safe place for him, right? And the source of joy was school, but he was adopted orphan from the States. And then when he came to Singapore, his foster mother and father, I think there was some family issues, so there was not a lot of love from the family environment. And when the day he died, he didn't commit suicide, which I felt was worse. Because if it was a suicide, it was a choice. He died trying to go to school because he was locked and barred from going to school, which was his source of joy. And he climbed out of the window in his school uniform, believing that from the fifth or fourth story, he can go to the third story and just to go to school. But in the process, of course, it was a rainy day. He slipped and he died. But when I talk about this story, I always in my mind tell you that it's a suicide. Because I would rather believe that he chosen to take his life in order to have a closure. Yeah. So this, yeah, I still remember when I went back home, I asked my dad, like, why did he die without saying goodbye? And that really shook my dad, because he lost his mom and his siblings, and they didn't say bye. So I guess that was my mental health journey and learning. I just want to say that it wasn't a suicide case, but it was a case whereby it was a part of the journey that I didn't talk about, but is someone that I do think about once in a while, because he was a close friend to me and we bonded over time, because I also didn't want to go back home. I wanted to stay in school. And James was a good friend in that way. Yeah.
How do you feel now?
Oh, I feel sad talking about him. I think this sadness is not a new sadness. It's a sadness from my 14-year-old, that someone that I was close with, who was also wrestling with his own issue, and we were seeking comfort in each other in some ways. Maybe there's some sort of common similarities. But I'm also inspired to talk about him because he has not surfaced before. And I dreamt about him a few years after his passing, so many years back. In my dream, I dreamt that he went to Polytechnic, and I met him, and we had a brief conversation, and he had to go because he was busy. Yeah, but there was a lot of sadness in the dream of not being able, of missing someone that who is so close to. So I think the grief was, because grieving is never linear, right? It goes front and back. So talking about this now, I felt the sense of grief, sadness, and also a sense of longing of the times that we used to spend together, even though they're so many years ago, but there's another person who we can connect with so closely.
How do you grieve?
Me, talking about it is really important. Staying with your feelings is utmost important. Grieving can be, the way I grieve, sorry, I nearly went into that training mode again. Grieving to me is about staying with my emotions, how difficult and how raw they may be, until that the feeling passes, so that I'm allowing it to go through me rather than being buried under some rock. Yeah, so that's why that when you ask me about James now, I'm allowing it to come out in an unprocessed way as part of my grieving process.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Thank you for asking. that I think a few years ago I started my own podcast. I interviewed many people who went through post-traumatic growth, people who got kidnapped, who went through suicide, loss of someone, went through dramatic life experiences. And the reason I could connect with them is because that there's this shared humanity in our suffering, in our pain. And pain is mandatory, but suffering is optional. When we talk about it, we are healing together collectively. And we also want to show to the next generation that it is okay not to be okay. And it's because of these conditions, it makes us human. And we can activate these elements now, not just to heal ourselves. Burn out people will continue to burn out the planet. Hurt people without awareness will continue to hurt others. But people who are healed people can regenerate and restore the planet and the world around us. So that's why the healing is collective. And so in the same mission, what we do, my work in the School of Positive Psychology and in other areas is that we want to extend this understanding through science and interventions that we are not alone, we are all connected.
What are you most excited about next?
I'm both scared and excited at the same time. So it's a big bag of adrenaline, emotions, and neurotransmitters, coming from the same place, adrenaline and a bit of cortisol and stress all in between. And I'm right now, because TSPP is the School of Positive Psychology has been 18 years in the making. So now we're at TSPP 3.0, meaning to say that we are bringing in new programs, partnering with more universities in the area of counseling, psychotherapy, coaching psychology, organizational psychology, well-being. So we are really at the forefront of championing well-being and mental health through the lens of higher education. So what's exciting for me right now, we are building an integrated well-being center that is a project next to TSPP. As I mentioned earlier, TSPP is not just an education institution, we are the education ecosystem. So the ecosystem includes the Integrated Wellbeing Center, which we are going to offer personal development where science meets wellness, looking at food, nutrition, lifestyle. We are integrating healing and coaching with mindfulness, so people can drop in for 60 minutes and experience the science of breathing, and they can also hang out and do a little bit of yoga infused with mindfulness, so that this has been a place of engagement and ecosystem. And the reason we are building this is because that this is a response to the world right now, that we are burnt out. There's a lot of fatigue and a lot of disengagement. So this ecosystem is to help our alumni, our partners in the industry to continue championing the work that we are doing. And it's also a system that well-being is a responsibility, is a leadership quality, self-leadership also. How we show up in the world impact other people. So this ecosystem of the Integrated Wellbeing Center with the School of Positive Psychology is an example of this.
Stephen, thank you for joining me today. And that was such a powerful conversation. I learned so much, not just in terms of your expertise of understanding burnout, mental health, depression, but also in seeing how big your heart is for humankind, how you really want to help people heal and be lifted, how you show up fully authentic, purely vulnerable, that doesn't make anyone feel uncomfortable, but actually I can feel myself leaning in more and feeling connected. And as I struggle in my own vulnerability, that was a mentorship for me, seeing how you do it and seeing how I can learn parts of it for myself. So thank you for being you, for being here, and for coming into my life.
Thank you for your kind words and reflection. I feel that this experience here and to the people that we're going to connect with is also a reflection of a moment that I like to believe that we can co-create together. So by sharing what you shared in terms of validation makes me feel more aligned to the mission. And I also know that your podcast and how you show up in the world is going to make more impact to people around us. And this is also a signal to more people who are listening into this or watching this that they can rise up and also lean into their superpower and make impact to meaningfully to other people too. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I need to draw something.
Okay, well, this is a bit of a surprise. It started as a childhood, my background in terms of my birthdays, issues when I was younger, and the intergeneration trauma that happened. Then this is the part whereby I lost not just a family members when I was growing up, but I also lost my best friend at 14 years old. He jumped from the fifth floor. So I lost him, and then there was also my experience with mental health and grief and depression. So national service came earlier. I dropped out from Polytechnic, and because I didn't find any focus in my studies, I wanted to go into the workforce first. Then before I went to part-time studies. Then at the age of 20 years old, when I finished my national service, I started traveling and I had a breakthrough in my life. And I discovered the spirituality and philosophy existentially. So I went to learn meditation, read different books, comparative religions. I started connected with God in my own ways. And then after that, there was a dip because I had a lung operation and it was massive. I was doing SARS period, nothing to do with SARS. And I went through this major orb and I was out of action. But physically, mentally, and emotionally, I was drained. But I did really well in my career. But after that, I had a career episode and I had to leave. I was fired from the company that I was working with. Then I had to join another company and I worked really hard and started going to applied psychology. And the company was sold to a larger organization, and then my efforts were not being recognized. And then there was a deep, so the big deep depression hit at that point of time. But my buddy Gabriel said that if you have done this for an organization that done really well, that doesn't belong to you, imagine that you start your own company. And then that's where I started TSPP, and then I also have found some social relationships that went wrong, and I have to redesign my life. And so this is started TSPP and met Alice, and also helped get to do the work that I choose to do. I think it has added a lot of meaning and joy.